I am so thrilled to be with you today, and I want to start off by thanking Jillian Gardner and the incredible leadership team at the AGOYO for their vision, for making this happen, and for simply giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. I hope that after watching this video, it's as rewarding for you as it has been for me preparing it. I was asked to speak on the church musician and technology, and so I am going to talk about those things and maybe give you some technology advice and whatnot. But I'm also going to kind of paint this topic in the broader brushstroke of entrepreneurship. And I've put together a huge script that I was going to follow. And I've done 2 of these videos so far, and I realize that it feels a little disassociated. And I just want to simply say these are crazy times, and I wish you were here. I gain strength from seeing your smiling faces, and it's very difficult to communicate how passionate I am about what I do and about making music when I'm speaking into a camera. But I'm going to do my best, and I just want you to know that I care, and I'm so grateful for who you are, and you inspire me. And I hope that my story and my experiences can inspire you and someone as well. So at this time, I've kind of decided to just share my story with you, and hopefully you can learn something from it. In this story is lots of information about the church musician and technology, so I think you'll find what you need there. But if there were a few things that I would love for you to walk away with after watching this video, it would be, number 1, the importance of finding your niche. Find what you are passionate about and relentlessly stick to it. There will be times when you get overwhelmed, or you're tired, or there's obstacles in front of you. You can always find a way. Be creative. In fact, in those moments, I find that's when my creativity explodes, is when everything seems it's against me, preventing me from accomplishing that goal. The second thing I'd love for you to walk away with is a respect for the power of investing. Being willing to take risks to accomplish what you want, and being willing to sacrifice a little bit, either monetarily or mentally, to accomplish those goals. And also investing in others. In fact, that's the last thing on my list, is the importance of simply being kind. We all desperately need each other. And if we want to keep our craft going, we need each other more than we probably realize. So my advice is rejoice in others' triumphs. I've seen so many of my musician friends get caught up in the wallowing of comparison and asking the question, well, why isn't success happening for me? I am working just as hard. That's more important in those situations, I have found, to get up and get back to work, because someday success will come to you, and you'll hope that your friends that you care so deeply about will rejoice in your successes as much as you rejoice in theirs. And again, we need each other. So those are the 3 things that I hope that you walk away with from this, is finding what you're passionate about, investing, and simply being kind to others. And so at this time, I simply want to just share kind of my story and how it relates to these things. My story really begins several years ago with my grandma Lois. She received an inheritance of several $1,000s. They weren't well off at the time, and with that money they could have bought many things that they probably needed, but instead they decided to buy an organ. And at that time, electronic organs were quite fascinating. And Grandma Lois taught anybody who wanted to learn the hymns to play for church, she would teach them free organ lessons. She made an impact on a lot of people's lives in music. And when I look back at the legacy of music in my family, that's where it all starts for me. But what's most special to me is in this home, my mother grew up, and she took organ lessons and eventually took organ lessons at college. And it was my mom who taught me organ lessons starting at the age of 9 till I was 17, and began taking from a professor there in the community that we lived. And so there's not a day that goes by that I'm not deeply grateful for that legacy. And when I think of my grandma Lois and that sacrifice that she made, it gives me purpose as I pursue my goals and my vision. And I'm so grateful for my mom who kept me going. There were times when I was young that I did not want to do organ. Many of you have probably been through similar things. And I'm grateful every day that she pushed me and made me do it. When I was getting ready for college, I received full tuition scholarships to both Brigham Young University and University of Washington. I chose BYU. While at BYU, alongside my organ studies, which were terrific, by the way, and I learned so much, but I also received a minor in business, which that whole world kind of blew me away. As musicians, we don't get training in the world of business, but yet that's such a huge part of what we do. I learned about the important skills of marketing and networking and investing and all those things. I still think about, like it was yesterday taking those classes, I still think about all of those things every time I'm trying to achieve my goals or trying to get places. I remember that business degree. At the end of my studies at BYU, I remember that I was kind of burned out of music, and several of my colleagues throughout the years have kind of come across that as well, just facing burnout, just getting tired. I was just tired of what I was doing, and I was exhausted and ready to be done. And I remember at that point I decided to be a dentist, and I took 2 years of pre-dental courses and started preparing to go to dental school. And it wasn't until after those 2 years that I finally shadowed what dentists actually do. And here I was, having worked in these gorgeous cathedrals and spaces, playing these beautiful instruments, these wide open spaces. I couldn't imagine after that working inside a tiny little mouth. And so it was kind of a real crisis for me, because what do I do? I'm getting older, and I've invested so much time into this. And it was at that time that I decided to get back into music. But this time I was going to do it in a way that was healthier. I was going to find a way to do it that would fuel me and drive me for the rest of my life, so that I would love it. And so I set out to University of Kansas to get my master's with this goal and this adventure in mind. And it wasn't long after being at the University of Kansas that Dr. Higdon and Dr. Bauer really saw in me a passion for composition. And it was during this time that I started to kind of formulate my vision, what was going to be my purpose in music. And I discovered that I loved writing sacred concert music kind of like Messiaen, Monteverdi, Bach, Mendelssohn, music kind of in this vein. And I was deeply passionate about it, and my vision over the years has quantified into this. I simply want to write music that endures time and that continues to inspire and engage people even after I leave this world. So everything I do is geared towards this focus. So University of Kansas is where I started to kind of solidify my vision. After the University of Kansas, I pursued my doctoral studies at the University of North Texas. And it was after those 4 years, those grueling 4 years, wonderful 4 years, that my story really starts. At this time, I had a beautiful little family of 4 kids. And I graduated from doctoral studies with student loan debt and no job. And it was at this time when, as I mentioned earlier, that wall was ominous. And I had no idea how I was going to get over that wall. My vision was to write music that endures time, but yet I wasn't making any money on music sales or my music. I wasn't receiving any commissions at the time. For all intents and purposes, I was a nobody. I was still at the bottom. And I thought to myself, what is next? And I soon felt that academia might be a way that can help me achieve my goals, may open some doors. But I was far away from being able to get a job in academia. And what I'm going to tell you next are things that I learned that I wish I would have known, that I could have worked on while I was in my master's and doctoral studies. So I hope these things help you and help you think about things to do now while you're in school and while you're preparing, that can help you be ready quicker. But I made a list. I sat down, I said, if I was on a search committee or a hiring committee in academia, what would I want to see? And I would want to see teaching experience. I would want to see someone who was concertizing regularly and consistently. I would want to see an online presence, maybe some YouTube videos. I would want to see recordings. And I recognized right away that while I had some of these things, that I needed some work on other things. For example, at the time I had an adjunct position at a local university teaching class piano, and a year later I was able to get an adjunct position at University of North Texas teaching organ literature and class piano as well. And if you want a job in academia, it's important for you to keep your foot in the door of academia. It's very difficult to get back in if you ever get out. So that was important for me to maintain a foot in the door of academia. But at the time, my concertizing was pretty weak. So I set a goal. I decided, well, after talking with one of my colleagues, I thought, well, how about I just call up places that I want to go do concerts at, and I'll offer to do a free concert. So I invested my own money many times to fly to these places and do concerts, but my CV started to show consistent concertizing. So I worked towards filling my calendar with regular concerts. And at this time, I also recognized, well, if I'm doing regular concerts, I need to come up with a new strategy for practicing, because I am not only a composer, but a performer. And if I want to write music, I'm going to have to be more efficient in my practicing. So at this time, I began reviewing my music and my practicing. So every day when I start to practice, I review a couple pieces that I've already learned. And right now I have about 4 hours of music underneath my fingers, and that allows me to put recitals together much quicker. And so that was a trick that I put together to be more efficient, so I had more time to compose and do the things that I absolutely loved. I had no recordings. At the time, I had no YouTube videos. So in the summer of 2014, when I graduated, I set about I had at that time quite a bit of music that I had written, so I set up a website. And it cost me quite a bit. It cost me about $350 a year to sell my music on my website. I am self-published, and I love it because I have full copyright control over my music, how I present myself, and it allows me to have complete creative control over my artistry. I looked at pioneers of self-publishing, Stephen Paulus, and another one that was really influential on me was Zachary Wadsworth, and kind of emulated their websites and how they presented themselves. And that was really, really exciting to try and figure out on my own, because I didn't have the money to pay someone else to design my website for me, and found out that it wasn't terribly difficult, and it's something that you can do as well. In fact, there are so many beautiful templates out there for websites that you can no doubt find one that will represent your passion, your vision, and your artistry. That summer or that fall, again, I'm broke. I have student loan debt. I have no resources. I needed to put together some videos for an application that I was putting together at a university job that I was applying to. And I had no equipment. At the time, I did have a set of mics. So earlier in my doctoral studies, I had purchased a stereo pair of omnidirectional mics, and those are the best mics for recording organ music, by the way, omnidirectional mics. And the ones that I bought, I'll try and show a picture here. It's the Evenson STO2s, and I found them for $550 out of an outfit in Austin, Texas, and they came highly recommended from someone who'd used the same pair in a Naxos recording. Well, if you know anything about mics, $550 is really, really cheap. They're pretty expensive, and for the price, the quality was fantastic. So every YouTube video that you see of mine, every recording that I've done has been done with those mics. But before that, when I didn't have enough money to spend $550, and I didn't even have enough money to buy those mics then, I bought what we call a Zoom H4n. And it's a little recording device, and it's 1,000 times better than any mic on your phone, and it's about $200. So if you are extremely budget conscious, invest and get something that sounds a little bit better than the mic on your phone. The video on your phones is great. Go ahead and use it. But if you want to record yourselves, I would advise you, just plead with you, get beautiful audio, because you want to hear what you put so much work into this. Don't you want to hear it with high fidelity sound? Don't you want to hear it the best that it could possibly be? And for most of us, we don't have the resources and the money to pay an audio engineer to come and do it for us. And so in many cases, it's much better for us to do it ourselves. And now that I have these mics, I take them all over the world with me and record beautiful organs all over the world, and it's been very beneficial. I kind of went off on a tangent, but anyways, I was getting ready to put together these videos, and I had really good recording equipment, but I had no video equipment. And at the time, I did not have the money. I did some research. I did not have several $1,000s to purchase the video cameras that I would need to do a project like this. And I remember I was just at my final straw. And it's in those moments that like I said, creativity explodes. And I remember thinking about a friend of mine that seemed connected, so I called him up. I said, hey, do you know anybody that may have some video cameras that may be willing to come and help me out? He says, well, hey, you know our friend works for Nikon. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. So I called up my buddy that works for Nikon, and he was ecstatic. He was thrilled, and he came down. I think I paid him $100, and he had $10,000 worth of gear from Nikon. And we set up these 3 different cameras, and he just was so excited just to try it out. He'd never done video work before, and so he was just thrilled to do it. And it was such a blessing. They turned out so beautiful, and these are still some of my most popular videos today of some of my most popular music. And anyways, I ended up editing the video. I ended up getting the 30-day free subscription of Final Cut Pro 10, which is a Mac video editing software. I think it's $200, so I ended up buying it at some point. But at the time, I just used the 30-day free trial because I didn't have the money to purchase it quite then. So for $100, I got 3 high-quality videos with gorgeous cameras. But later on in my life, I've purchased equipment. So now that I can do the videos by myself. So now I have 3 beautiful DSLR cameras. I use the EOS. I have an EOS 70D, EOS 80D, and an EOS 90D. They're Canon cameras, DSLR. And for the camera and the lens, it's about $1,500. So that's something you can maybe work towards. But if you have good audio, even your phones will work. For a long time, I would show my pedal with my iPhone, and it worked great. And so those are things you can do. You don't have to have tons of money to make things happen. In fact, many times I've used student videographers to help me accomplish video projects. People who are kind of at the beginning of their careers and are looking for the experience rather than to be compensated for what they do. And so there may be colleagues or students around you that can help you accomplish your videography goals. So I was concertizing. I finally had some YouTube videos. I had a beautiful website. I was teaching, and so we were making progress. And during this time, I just was, like I said, my passion is writing sacred music. And I had in mind writing this large-scale art mass. It was an hour-long piece, 9 movements for choir and organ and soloists, violin and cello. And at the time, I wasn't making enough money to keep things going, and people around me thought I was crazy for working on this project, but I just felt so passionate about it. I made it happen. That was my vision. That's what I love. This is what keeps me sane. This is what keeps me from being burned out, was writing sacred concert music. So I stuck with it, regardless of all of the noise coming from all the directions. And it was an impossible project. I mean, what choir out there do you know that just jumps at performing an hour-long art mass in the style of Duraflé, something very challenging from a no-name composer? And I must have reached out to several different conductors, and while people were happy for me and they seemed to enjoy the piece, nobody was willing to do it. So finally, I had a contact who was a young conductor who had just started a choir in Fort Worth, and I reached out to him. I said, hey, what do you think about collaborating on this project? We sat down together, looked at the music, and it just felt right for both of us. And to this day, I am so grateful that he signed on to do the project. But it was a massive undertaking. So we had the choir. We started it in the spring to premiere this work, and we recognized right away to pull this off, we needed about $7,000. Again, I had an adjunct position, and money was tight. There was no way I was going to be able to get that money. We were able to find a cheap videographer, but to pay our soloists and event fees and all sorts of things, marketing, we needed about $7,000. So luckily we live in the day of an age of crowdfunding, and we set up a GoFundMe page, and we put together this gorgeous promotional video, and we went about we went about praying that this would work out. And sure enough, we were able to raise $7,000. Now, I will never do that again because most of the people that gave were friends and family, and I could never do that to them again. But I was so passionate about my vision that I was willing to do anything it took to make it happen. So I'm emotional about this because it was such a beautiful experience, and you can have that experience too through what you're doing. After we completed that beautiful project, we had a full-length production video. We did it the right way. We did promotional videos, we did a full-length production video, we put it online, and I knew at this point that I was preparing myself to be the best candidate I possibly could be for any job that showed up. And it wasn't a year later that I landed my first academic position. But I want to share a couple other stories with you that were led up to that. Everything that I do in life, I look at what people are doing and I try to do it just a little bit better if I can. The only thing I can't do that with is writing fugues, because Bach was just so transcendent. It's impossible to write a fugue as good as him. But I shouldn't say that because maybe it is possible. There are people that can do that beautifully. But one such example is my CV. So when I was preparing to apply for these jobs, I looked at the CV templates out there and I just thought, I'm an artist. I believe in what I'm doing. Like, I need my CV to reflect who I am as an artist and how I feel. And I said, this isn't doing it for me. So I went about putting some graphic design chops to work on making my CV look beautiful. And this is kind of what I came up with. It could be better. Of course, I designed it myself. If I were to hire somebody else to do it, it would probably look even better. But at the same time, it stood out. And when I applied for my position here at University of Texas at San Antonio, when I actually came to work the following year, one of the people on the hiring committee said, the moment I saw that CV cross my desk, I didn't even look at it. I knew that you were the person that we needed to have here. So those things matter, how you present yourself online, and use graphic design tools to help you get there. Look around, see what other people are doing, and see if you can replicate it in the platforms that you know how to use. For example, I'm not very good with Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator. Some of you are. But I'd love trying to recreate it in Pages or Word, things that I know how to use. And it's amazing what you can do in that free software to make things look really, really beautiful. So those are some things I do. Now, there was a time in my life where I have made some investments that didn't pay off. For example, in 2018, we had the national convention in Kansas City, and I decided, even though I was again super poor, I somehow convinced my wife to let me spend. It cost about $2,000 by the time I reserved the booth and printed off all of my music. So I was going to set up a booth and sell my music. So I showed up to the booth with tons of music, had it all set up, expecting if I sold all the music I'd printed, I would have made like $4,000. So I knew I was going to make about $4,000. I made $200, and it was devastating. And I went home to my wife, $1,800 in debt, saying that was a bad investment decision. I took the risk and failed miserably. However, sometimes the return that we get on our investment isn't always immediate and isn't always in the way that we expect. And one of the beautiful things that happened there was Michael Barone. Of course, most of you know who he is. He came by my booth and gave me a free CD of some preludes and fugues that he had commissioned. I said, well, tell you what, let me give you a free CD. So I gave him my Christus CD, the recording that we made from the premiere of my large art mass. A couple months later, I get an email from Michael Barone. I don't know who you are, and I don't know how I got your CD, but I started listening to it, and I couldn't stop. And it was one of the most transcendent experiences I've ever had with a piece of music. Thank you. And several months later, one of the movements ended up on his radio broadcast. And just that email alone just gave me hope and peace that what I'm doing does matter. That my vision, My purpose matters. And it gave me strength to continue, to keep going. That summer as well is when I funded the recording of the premiere of Christus, my large art mass that I talked about earlier. And I had called around to a bunch of different label distributors all over the world, ones that you're familiar with in the organ world and also classical world, and most of them it costs anywhere from about $4,000 to $12,000 just to have your recording released with that label. I'm like, I don't have even $4,000, but I have this gorgeous recording that I made with my own mics, and I'm like, I've got to find a way to make a CD. So I started researching it and found out that through CD Baby, that I could distribute this recording all over the world through Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon, you name it, it's there. And I could print CDs, and I could do it all for about $1,600. So I designed the cover myself, I designed the CD, the casing, all myself, submitted it, and now that recording's all over the world for $1,600. I even made up my own label. So when I put on my CV, my recording was released on the Neumark label. It makes it sound a little bit better. So that's our little secret. Don't you guys tell anybody. But hopefully it kind of opens your eyes to, again, when you're at the lowest level, that's when creativity explodes. That's when you can do your best work. And now, as I applied for jobs, I had recordings, I had online presence, I had concertizing, teaching, and I felt confident. And that year, I had several job interviews at places all over the country. And I ended up landing, that year, this position at University of Texas at San Antonio, and it's been incredible. It's opened so many doors for me, and I am so blessed. Now, the question is, well, I want to share one thing, and then I want to ask a question. Just make sure I'm doing okay for time here. Yes. These things matter. All of these things I'm telling you, if an understanding of these principles and my story, just how it applies to these principles, it may help you land a job. It may help you find more fulfillment in your life. And again, remember I talked about the things I want you to walk away is find your niche. What are you passionate about? You know what I'm passionate about, but what are you passionate about? How are you going to accomplish it? What's your plan? Number 2, don't be afraid to invest. Taking risks is an important part of accomplishing your goals. You're going to have to take risks at some point. You're going to have to sacrifice something to achieve something. And then the last thing, again, is be kind. Be supportive of those around you. Rejoice in their triumphs because they matter. We all matter. We all need each other desperately, and especially right now. I want to share just a quick story. One of my colleagues recently graduated with a degree in composition. He calls me up. He says, I've applied for tens of jobs and I'm not getting any callbacks, no feedback, nothing. It's just silence. And this went on for about a year. And finally, I sat down with him. I had a residency at the University of Utah, so I was in his town. And I sat down with him, and I said, we'll tell you what. Let's look at your CV. Let's look at how you present yourself, and let's see if there's maybe some tweaks we can make to make it a little bit better. We took a look. He didn't have a website. His CV looked like a Word template that you see online. And I know this person, and he's an incredible artist. And I said, well, tell you what, let's look at the person who got a job over you, that they overlooked you for this other person. And we get on her website, and she has this gorgeous dress, and she's standing in the middle of the desert. Bold photography. That's something to remember. Be bold in your photography. Have fun with it. You are an artist. How do you want to present yourself? And she looked like she had made it. She had performances all over the world, just like he did. She had major performances by major ensembles, just like he did, but she presented herself in a way like, I've already made it. Our minds were blown. So immediately he set out, I showed him what my CV was. Immediately he set out, he created a beautiful website, just a gorgeous website, worked really hard on it, updated his CV, put more language in there that talked about who he really was, an international artist and composer. Shortly thereafter, he had 3 callbacks on jobs. He's now going to have a piece performed in Brazil. So these principles really, really do work. While my story isn't finished, I've told you my story. and my vision and my passions. And many of you are probably asking, you got the job in academia, what is next? Well, I have my ideas. Well, I'm working towards accomplishing my goals. How would you write the rest of my story? How would you write the rest of your story? And you all have stories. You all have a gift and something beautiful to leave this world. My friends, thank you for sticking out through this video. I wish you all the very, very best as you pursue your passions, your dreams, your goals. Remember, find what you're passionate about, invest, and be kind. Be kind to others. And I hope something that was said inspired you to just simply be a little better and to try a little harder to achieve your goals. I wish I could see you. I gain strength from working with you. And I wish you all the very best as you navigate these next phases of your lives. And I hope that happiness and success comes to you as it has for me. We do music. We love it. It's incredible. Be grateful that you get to experience music. Thank you, my friends.